This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The Practice Squad presents the Throwback Episode 2. We'll be going over games 3 and 4 of the 2011 Detroit Lions season against the Vikings and Cowboys. They came into this week 2-0. I guess we just start off right off the bat. A win over the Vikings, 26-23 in overtime. Not an overly memorable game. In fact, I don't know that I really recognize any of this game. I don't know about you, Stroz. Last week there were moments that I recognized. I just think the next game, week 4, I think was memorable.
Yeah, this game kind of in the middle of it all just gets lost in the shuffle as you kind of look at the bookends of the season. I didn't really remember a whole ton from this game. As this game started to kind of unfold, there were certain parts where I was like, okay, that kind of seems familiar, but really and truly overall, this game was not memorable at all.
No, I did not think so either. We talked about this some last week, but the biggest thing that stood out in this Vikings game to me was the linebacking core is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's funny because I'm always a pass rush and turnovers guy, which, by the way, I was looking into some of the numbers. This defense wasn't very good in overall points allowed. They were 10th worst in points allowed, but they were, I believe it was 5th in interceptions forced, 10th in sacks, 3rd in third down percentage. Like, they did really well in a lot of key areas. It just didn't translate to total points.
It was a very opportunistic defense. Like, if I remember correctly, this defense was always causing some sort of fumble in every game or causing some sort of turnover in every game.
I mean, that's what we've seen so far. It seems like there's, and like you said, opportune, not just opportune in that they're taking advantage of opportunities, but opportune in timing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems like the defense came up, and we'll talk about that a lot in week 4 versus the Cowboys, but the defense came up with stops and sacks and turnovers when they needed them.
That was something I took away from both of these games, too, was how good this defense was, either on a 4th down play or when they were backed up in the red zone or at the goal line. This team the defense always seemed to make a huge play to force the ball back into Detroit's hands.
Can we address real quick, totally out of nowhere? Do you remember Donovan McNabb being a Minnesota Viking?
When I seen him with that jersey on, I was like, oh yeah, that's where he went after Detroit.
For real. I spent at least the first offensive drive going, who is the black quarterback for the Vikings?
That's funny you say that, because I was like, is that Donovan McNabb?
Well, so I was like, Joe Webb started some games for them, right? But week 3? Like, I don't think he ever started week 3. I was like, it's not Dante Culpepper. Like, I was trying to figure out who the hell that was, and I should have put the number 5 and just the style of play together, because I was a big McNabb fan. But I knew he played for the Redskins. I didn't remember his Viking stint. From what I looked at, it looks like he only started 6 games. I don't remember if he got hurt or they replaced him or what happened. But that was the one thing. This was a bad Vikings team. It was end of career McNabb. There wasn't a wide receiver on the roster of note. Adrian Peterson was special.
Peterson, the one thing I took out of this game, especially early, was how much of a workhorse Adrian Peterson was. This guy was in on just about every offensive play. They would rotate him out now and again to give him a breath, but he was involved so much. He had back-to-back-to-back carries, I think, on that opening drive. And I was like, dude, they just force-fed him the ball 3 times. I think he ended up picking up like 20 yards in those 3 plays.
The Vikings' leading receiver in the game was Michael Jenkins, so that tells you about the offense they had. I thought this was the first time we really saw, in episode 1, Stroz, you talked about this team had an offensive line. I think we really started to see that they didn't have an offensive line this week. Now, the Vikings' defense was good, but they had 19 carries for 20 yards in a win. That was incredibly embarrassing. I thought Stafford was pressured all day, sacked 4 times.
5 times. He was sacked 5 times.
5 times?
Yeah.
There was like a possession at the end of this game that it's crazy that it's not memorable, but like just to like set the scene for you if you're not watching. It's been a relatively close game throughout. The Lions are tied with a minute left, ball at the 20-yard line, 3 timeouts. I'm looking at that situation. I don't even have to know the team. The context tells me you're in a pretty good spot because you're not going to lose in regulation, but you can get a little aggressive and see if you can get a winning field goal before regulation's over, right? First down, Jeff Backus, false start. That's the 15-yard line. 1st and 15. 1st and 15, false start. Jeff Backus. 1st and 20. And then the most incredible thing, Jared Allen's a great pass rusher. But on 1st and 20, after back-to-back false starts, Jeff Backus didn't get a hand on Jared Allen. Stafford goes down at the 5-yard line, and what went from a great situation for the Lions where, like, there's no way you're losing in regulation, now all of a sudden it's 2nd and 25, you're at the 5-yard line, and the Vikings are calling timeout. Because chances are, and the Lions had to end up punting, the Vikings got the ball, it would have been at, like, the 40, but thank God there was a holding. Like, this is a game. I'm not one who likes to put too much on individual players or individual moments. The Lions probably should have lost this game.
Yes, absolutely.
Because single-handedly, because of Jeff Backus on that possession. Because if it wasn't for a holding on the punt return, the Vikings would have had the ball 10 yards from field goal range in a situation that, like, the only way you lose that game in regulation is just being atrocious. And Jeff Backus single-handedly put the Lions in that incredibly awful position. It was honestly, Stroz, like, this is one of the cool things about going back and watching where, like, I know the results. I'm not worried about the results. I'm not emotionally invested. I am just watching to see what happens. This is the single worst drive by any one player that I've watched through 3 weeks, and I would be surprised if it gets passed up.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So, as this game kind of unfolded, I put Lions O-line doesn't look so good early, and they didn't look good late either.
It looked worse.
Yeah.
Worse late.
Like you said, that Vikings defense was pretty decent, but that Vikings team was awful. Absolutely awful. Quarterback wasn't any good. The only thing they really had was Adrian Peterson. They had trouble figuring out how to get Percy Harvin involved. He was probably their most lethal weapon besides Adrian Peterson, and they just couldn't figure out how to utilize him right. And this was a game that the Lions legitimately should have lost. Now, the one thing I did take away from this game and the Cowboys game was that this team was able to make second half adjustments, and you've seen that when they came out to start the third quarter. But overall, this was a horrible game for the Detroit Lions. They looked absolutely abysmal. That offensive line let Matt Stafford down. That offensive line put this team in bad spots after snap after snap after snap. And you're right, that Jeff Backus play. Good God, man. Jared Allen, I remember Jared Allen I used to have nightmares of Jared Allen. Just terrorizing the Lions.
Defensive end. I mean, he was like a Pro Bowl defensive end. Mm-hmm. But, like, and maybe this is just me being younger. I don't remember him being what I think of with some of today's elite pass rushers.
No, here's the thing. He would kill the Lions. Like, he even said, they would do an interview with him. I think later on in this year, they play like a Sunday night game. And it might be against the Vikings. I'm not 100% sure. But there have been times where he's been on record of saying that he gets up for the Lions games. Like, there are games that you just elevate your game as an athlete, and he would just take it to a whole other level when he would play the Detroit Lions, and he would kill them. He would feast on them.
Looking at it, most of his career, Jared Allen was between an 11 to 14 sack guy, which is like, I mean, it's elite. I think it's on the bottom end of elite. You know, you're probably one of the best 5 to 10 defensive ends in the league at that range. 2011, he had 22 sacks. And I mean, that year is you're probably talking 2 or 3 best pass rushers. So to give some credit there. But the thing was, like, Jeff Backus didn't even slow him down. It was, your eyes are already on him. And then that sack, it was one of the most memorable situations. And by the way,
Jared Allen had 3 sacks in this game, by the way.
Let me go a step. Yeah,
3 of those 5 came from Jared Allen.
A step beyond. They should have lost this game because of that. There was almost a safety.
Yeah.
They almost got the ball at the 20-yard line with a minute left and lost on a safety. That would have been the most comical loss. Like, that's like losing a baseball game on a bulk, sending somebody home from third base, which we've seen. But, like, that's as embarrassing as it gets.
Yeah, this was not the Detroit Lions' finest moment. So, after this game, right, I vaguely remember thinking to myself, like, man, those first 2 games might have been a fluke because they probably should have lost this game. Happy they won, but they probably should have lost this game.
So, I don't think, like, watching throughout, I thought the Lions were the better team. I thought Jeff Backus, again, it's hard to put it all in one guy. I think Jeff Backus is the reason they should have lost that game, and exclusively because of the last couple minutes of the game. I thought they were the better team throughout outside of that. I mean, it was closer than it probably should have been. I also want to shift to a different note I had. I don't know if you remember me saying this last week. And Brendan Pettigrew had his issues with drops his entire career. But he was a more, I don't know, reliable is not the right word. But he played a major role in the Lions passing game for a while. And 2011, I think, was really the highlight of it. And he showed that in this week. He actually led the team with receptions at 11, yards at 112, targets at 13. Kelvin had the only 2 receiving touchdowns. But Brandon Pettigrew was so key in this game. And especially because I said it last week, and again, I think it showed here. Stafford had some trouble on his deep balls consistently. But he was masterful in the short to mid-range game for the most part. And that's where Brandon Pettigrew played a huge role.
Brandon Pettigrew was probably the key component for the Lions winning this game because it was 3 or 4 receptions he had on monster third downs that extended series for the Lions. Early on in this game, it was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And then they started going to Pettigrew, especially on third downs, and he would come up with clutch receptions. He had a monster game in this game. He played outstanding, and he ate up the middle of the field as this game kind of unfolded.
Yeah, it felt like it was really all Kelvin and Pettigrew.
Yeah.
I mean, Javid Best had 5 receptions for 75 yards. If I remember correctly, yeah, he had a 60-yard reception. He had like a screen pass that he took deep, which is something we talked about last week. Javid Best, even though he went 12 carries for 14 yards, played a big role when he got the opportunity in the passing game. Titus Young, again, a guy we mentioned who kind of showed up in week 2, played a role, 4 receptions, 51 yards. I have a note that says, does Titus Young ever catch a normal pass? This dude was always, now he was small. I think he was 5'11", if I remember correctly. But he always had to go up and get it or lay out. There was never an easy catch for him. I don't got a whole lot of notes left on this game personally, but one thing I do want to mention, because this is going to be a theme. And that's one thing I'm going to try to keep track of too. Themes. I'm keeping all my notes from every game. Stafford had multiple deep balls that were like throw it up and let Kelvin go get it. He didn't do anything special. I thought there was only one that was caught, and it was for a touchdown. I don't think Stafford really did anything on that touchdown. But Stafford in overtime threw an absolute dime piece. In fact, in my notes, I swore. I said a fucking dime piece. Because it was incredible. Like 40, 50 yards. Kelvin, only one arm extended, and it lands like right in his hand. It's something that even today, I don't think Stafford, he's much better at it. But I think something that separates the guys like Stafford from the guys like Mahomes, Rodgers, Brady, Breeze, it is that 50, 60-yard deep ball where receivers don't even have to adjust.
Yeah, in this game, it was a 40-yard pass to Calvin Johnson, and it's what set up the game-winning field goal.
They literally came out field goal the next play. They didn't even run the ball again. And Calvin made a great play too. It was both sides, but I just couldn't get over the placement of that pass in overtime to seal the deal. I thought Stafford overall was, kind of underwhelming. I think he didn't have a terrible game, but he's just underwhelming.
You know what made him look underwhelming? It was like you said, he had so many missed opportunities or so many passes that were either knocked down, batted down, or could have possibly been intercepted. He didn't look very smooth, didn't look very good in this game. He did enough for them to win, and if you look at his stats and you look at his numbers, they weren't horrible, but the eye test, he didn't look great.
This is where you get into the discussion of he was being chased all day, being hit all day, and his run game ran for literally a yard per carry.
Dude, they let him down. It was so bad. They just at a certain point they just abandoned the run because they were going no place.
19 carries for 20 yards is. I'm sorry, I don't know. Oh yeah, I'm looking at the wrong game. Yeah, 19 carries.
No, 19 carries for 20 yards.
That's incredible. The Vikings ran the ball 23 times. It's not like the Lions didn't try to run; it just wasn't there.
Right.
That was. I think you'd probably be hard pressed to find a game, not just this year, like any season, where the Lions did a worse job running the ball. Do you have any more notes you want to get to before we get to our studs and duds?
No, we go right to studs and duds. All
right, last week we called this MVP and most disappointing. Missed opportunity. Stroz came up with a way to use your name. We're going to start with your dud. Who is your dud?
The offensive line. The offensive line as a whole was absolutely brutal in this game. And like we just said, it kind of led to Matt Stafford running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And just it really felt like there were ghosts chasing him at certain points in this game.
So I had Stafford written down. That being said, while talking through it, I kind of realized, because I'm taking these notes as I'm watching, And that was a reaction to the whole game. I thought he was underwhelming despite no running game, no offensive line, but I've changed it because I don't think that's fair. I think the combination of the useless running game and how many times he was hit falls on the offensive line, but I'm going to go one step further. I don't know if I'm going to kill a guy for the performance that, and I am letting too much of 1 minute affect me, but Jeff Backus is my dud.
It's fair.
I don't think at this point in his career he was a left tackle anymore. And maybe I'm overreacting to one game. I do remember, though, back in 2011 thinking, like, we always felt like the offensive line sucked in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly Jeff Backus was good. Like, people viewed him as a positive. But they also viewed Dominic Raiola as a plus. And Gadisha Cheerless was a recent first-round draft pick. And so it was like, I'm not saying Jeff Backus wasn't a starter at this point in his career. I don't think he was a left tackle. And I think that end possession, that's a bet. You know, this is a guy late in his career who went false start, completely whiffs on his block. In crucial moments where the only thing you can't do is go backwards. So he's my dud. Who's your stud?
Stud's got to be Pettigrew. Pettigrew was so clutch in this game. Whenever Stafford needed help or needed a safety valve, it was Brandon Pettigrew. He had probably one of his best games of his career in this game, and he was big time for this team, and he was instrumental in them getting a big win.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go there on some level. In fact, I have written down, I wanted to give it to Pettigrew, who played a major role. But I had to go with Calvin. I thought that the first touchdown, because the Vikings had gotten out to a lead early. Now, this one, in Game 3 against the Vikings, it didn't get out of hand. It did in the next game we're going to talk about. But I think a huge part of what stopped it from getting out of hand was the deep touchdown to Calvin Johnson. I believe it was a 6. What was the longest reception he had? The longest was a 40, so I don't know which one was the 40, if it was the one that sealed it.
The 40 was the one that led to the game-winning field goal.
Okay. So I don't know how long the touchdown was, but the first touchdown that got the Lions on the board,
I think it was 34 yards.
It was just Stafford throwing it up there. There was absolutely no opening. It was like a 35-yard jump ball. And there aren't too many receivers in the history of the NFL who you throw 35-yard jump balls to. And I thought that like up until that moment, the Vikings were in control of that game. I thought that changed it. And then, of course, he had another touchdown. That was a jump ball in the end zone, short of the throw. And then, on top of 2 touchdowns, the only receiving touchdowns in the game, he also had the play to set it up. And that was a great throw by Stafford, but it was also one-handed catch by Calvin. It was tough because I don't want to give too many to Calvin, but I'm just going to be honest. And I think Calvin deserved it. Pettigrew was probably number 2.
It's fair. Calvin was huge in them winning this game. I just felt like every time Stafford needed help, or every time, especially early in this game, before they kind of got the wheels going, Pettigrew was the guy who got them out of tough spots, especially on third downs. That's why I'm going to lean Pettigrew. But I don't think you're inaccurate for giving it to Calvin.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was Pettigrew's best game of the season, but we'll have to see as we move forward. Moving on, Game 4, the Lions beat the Cowboys 34-30 to move to 4-0, and they fell behind big in this one. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I don't know if you do. I believe they fell down 20-0.
It was at one point 27-3.
And at one point 27-3. And came back to win this game. This was absolutely a memorable game. I don't know about you, but the moment I saw who they were playing in Week 4, I knew which game this was.
Mm-hmm. Nope, absolutely.
I had a harder time, despite being a massive comeback. This game had less notes than me, than any of the previous 3.
Yes.
I do think it's worth mentioning. I thought the offense was useless for almost the entire game. This is a rare, much like the Chiefs game, where I said the offense was as weak as it could be in a blowout. I thought the offense was as weak as it could be in a 24-point comeback. The defense was far and away the key to this comeback.
No, you're absolutely right. The defense for the first half, at least, was non-existent and really didn't get going until halfway through that third quarter. And it was just like you said, they were just non-existent. Stafford had a bad day. Stafford did not look good. He had a lot of bad throws early. He had a bad interception on their first drive. And it really felt like he was constantly missing receivers or throwing into coverage and the ball either getting knocked down or almost picked. This game was not a good one for Matt Stafford. I think he struggled a lot.
Watch. You know, the offense didn't really do anything. And I'm going to say this a lot, but if Calvin Johnson is just putting up 2 touchdowns every week like it's nothing.
Yeah.
I forgot that. Has he had a week without 2 touchdowns yet?
No, not since we've done this. So he's sitting on like 8 for the season right now.
8 touchdowns, and it's just he had one of his many highlight plays in this one that you'll see whenever you see a Calvin highlight reel, a jump ball in the end zone with at least 2 defenders right there. But even Calvin Johnson, despite being as special as he is, just nothing about the offense stood out. This was a boring watch, honestly. Like, if you're listening and considering going back watching, so far I would say, I don't know, where would you rank them? I think right now, and we'll definitely do this later on in the season. I think right now I would say Tampa Bay was actually the most fun watch for me. Then maybe Minnesota, because it got fun. And I think we'll go Tampa Bay, Minnesota, Kansas City. And this one it's funny because a massive comeback, but I didn't really enjoy it all that much.
Yeah, it was a boring game. It wasn't a very good game. There weren't a lot of highlight plays by the offense. I don't know. It was like you said, as boring of a comeback as you could possibly have. I thought the defense really kept them in this game. It was like a much to do about nothing game. And again, the Lions were lucky that they won this. I
hesitate with that because the defense was special late. And that's where I was going to say, it's not fair to say the defense kept them in this game because they were not. They fell out of this game. The defense got them back into this game. In fact, I think the offense spent 40 seconds on the field in the third quarter because there were 2 pick sixes, one by Bobby Carpenter, the former Cowboy. I believe the other was by Chris Houston. And those were both on drives. The offense moved the ball a little bit, pick 6. Offense moved the ball a little bit, pick 6. Offense, I believe, went the whole way and scored a field goal on the final drive. Lions got the ball back with 40 seconds in the third quarter. And then here was the big thing. The offense was useless most of the day. When it got close, when it got back into the game, the offense did take over and do what it needed to do.
Yeah, but so I don't know. Watching this game, I felt like the offense was kind of the anchor. I felt like the defense was the reason that they won this. As a game overall, I felt like Detroit was lucky to eke out a win in Dallas. And it was one of those things where when all this was said and done, I do remember thinking to myself, like, that's 2 weeks in a row this team probably should have lost. Granted, they're on the road, but this is 2 weeks in a row this team probably should have lost. And I don't think good teams put themselves in holes like this.
I was with you on Minnesota. I don't agree with you on this week in Dallas. Now, they fell behind big, but
that was my thing. Good teams don't put themselves in holes. Not where you're down 27-3. And this team was fortunate to come back. And the defense came up huge. Defense came up huge and played big. But
just won a Super Bowl. How did they fall? They fell down how much in the conference championship game? I just don't think that's fair. Good teams. Now, if it was a comeback where you didn't feel like that they played well enough, that's fine. I think just saying good teams don't put themselves in this position isn't fair. Good teams do. And here was the big thing. The reason I don't have a lot of notes is because I don't think they sucked. It was just an underwhelming game. There was just nothing. Like, nobody was terrible. Nobody was great. The defense was great late, but nobody was great early. That's how they fell down. It doesn't feel like they should have ever been down 27-3.
I don't know. When I watched it, I don't know. Maybe we watched something different. I felt like the defense at times got picked apart. I felt like the defense at the back half of all of this was instrumental in them getting back in the game. Like you said, you had Carpenter's pick 6, you had Eric Wright's pick 6, and that was the reason that they were back in this game. But to me, it never really felt like this team. They didn't. I didn't feel like they deserved to win this game. Now, the thing that impressed me was there are times. This is what I've taken away from both these games. If you just kind of look at them in small windows. Something we bitch about all the time as Lions fans is the inability to make adjustments and come out in the second half. So in both the Minnesota game and in the Dallas game, they got their shit pushed in. Like, there's no other way to kind of put this. They got beat up and they got manhandled in both first halves of both of these games. Second half comes around, this team's a little bit different, and they've got just enough firepower to win these games. Like you said, this offense in this game particularly, when the game was on the line, they took over and they did enough to help this team win.
I really only have one more note before we get to studs and duds. I don't know how much more you have. But the one thing that I don't think we've addressed at all yet is that I thought the defense played well early, but was very undisciplined. And that was a theme, no doubt, in the season. We haven't seen it really until this week, but lots of key penalties. There was a 3rd and I believe it was like 5 or 6 around the 50-yard line that the Cowboys were stopped, and Sue got a roughing the passer that was just an unnecessary. To be fair, I thought it was weak. You know, he was always called for weaker roughing the passers, but it was an unnecessary late hit to the head. It didn't need to happen. The ball was already thrown. And I believe they went on to score a touchdown that possession. There were some, offsides. There were some holdings. I thought this was the first game where I really saw, the discipline start to cause them trouble. And it made me wonder how good this defense could have been if they were more disciplined. Because the thing is, like, there's that fine line, right? Like, a lot of times the best defenses do have a lot of penalties. And so, like, you don't want to entirely eliminate them. But this defense in particular, I remember, and you saw the times in this game, it was just key moments. Like, you need to understand when you can and can't be penalized.
No, you're right. And that was the thing. They, at times, this is going to be a theme, I think, as the season goes on, is they were undisciplined at times. The thing was, I think they were good enough as a whole to get themselves out of those holes that they put themselves in. But you're right. How good could this defense have really been if they weren't constantly shooting themselves in the foot? And Ndamukong Suh was a prime example of that pretty much throughout his career as a Detroit Lion. You know, so damn good, but he had such a bad attitude, and he would do the dumbest things. I mean, I remember that Thanksgiving Day game against Green Bay, which was, I think, 2012, 2013. And it was, I think it was 2013. It was just like, what the hell are you doing, man? And that game particularly, it cost them. So, no, you're absolutely right. The one other note that I have is, who the hell is Laurent Robertson? Because he killed the Lions all day long. Des Bryant was on this team. He was their big-time receiving threat. You also had Jason Witten on this team. And Laurent Robertson killed the Lions. Absolutely killed the Lions.
Now, but I actually didn't catch his name. And that is a fun little game when you're doing this to see the names that pop up a lot. Laurent Robinson only had 2,000 career yards.
116 of those came in this game.
That's actually incredible. You know what? I did write this down, but it's funny. Over the years, the way my opinions have changed about wide receivers. I thought this game showed you how valuable elite wide receivers are. I thought both Des Bryant and Calvin Johnson single-handedly made plays to put their teams in better positions. Des Bryant only had 3 catches, but 2 of them were for touchdowns. And if I remember correctly, both of them were like freak. Just you can't stop that guy catches. And like as much as we like Chris Houston, Chris Houston was not the guy I don't think that you wanted to be guarding Des Bryant. The Lions didn't have, while they had, I don't even want to say Chris Houston wasn't a number 1 corner, but the Lions didn't have a guy who could shut down your Des Bryants. No,
and the thing my second note in watching this game, because it was Des Bryant's touchdown over Chris Houston in the corner of the end zone. It was Des Bryant is so smooth. And I think that was something I said about Calvin Johnson last week when we reviewed the first 2 games. It was just the ease that these guys did this with.
You want to move on here now to our studs and duds?
Yeah.
All right. I did have Stafford. Actually, I wrote Stafford for both. I did change the Minnesota Vikings game. I do want to set this up with something I think is important.
Okay.
As a guy who's defended Stafford. I think everything we watch is hard to take out of it's hard to remove ourselves from the context of 2020 and the Stafford we know now. Because this was basically a rookie Stafford. He'd been in the league for 2 years, but this is his first full year as a starter. And we know what he became, and it is hard to watch that version of him. I said it already, but I wrote it in my notes. I don't think there was a single individual in this game who was terrible. I thought he was the most underwhelming of the bunch. He didn't do anything that I loved. You pointed out I didn't think he should have had a bunch of interceptions, but he did have some throws that he didn't give his guys a chance. It was the first game where I didn't think he was able to master the short game. The deep ball has consistently been an issue, but he's been really good in the short mid-range game, and I didn't see that so much in this one.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to put Stafford as your dud, because I think there was a fine case for it in this game. I do not have Stafford as my dud, but if you put him there, I totally get it and I totally understand. My dud is whoever was covering Laurent Robertson this entire game, because he annihilated the Detroit Lions secondary, killed them. Who's your stud?
My memory tells me that the number 2 cornerback on that team,
Eric Wright,
was Was it Eric Wright? Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was Aaron Berry, but maybe he was third. He doesn't even have a stat registered, so I don't know if he was hurt in that game, but I know he played later on in the year. Yeah, I mean, Eric Wright, I don't remember being anything special. We talked about it. It was a secondary with...
you had guys. You had guys that were average.
But the depth wasn't there.
Exactly.
My stud, I kind of laughed in Game 3 because you kind of referenced this, and a little bit here as well. My stud was Jim Schwartz.
Oh.
I thought, one, the defense is the biggest reason that they won this game, but also the whole team put things together when they needed to. Like, this season is where Stafford first really earned his reputation as a comeback king. I know that he had, obviously, that moment against the Browns in his rookie season that really put him in people's minds as that, but he did it a lot this season, and this wasn't a good game for Stafford, but the offense got it figured out when they needed to late. The defense was great late. This is just falling down 27-3 to come back requires what they did. Mm-hmm. It requires the offense and defense both to be all the way on. And I got to give credit to Jim Schwartz because he was the one at the head of it. So they didn't come back because of one person. And that's a big part of why I think that they deserve to win this game. This was a full team comeback. They put it together when they had to.
Yeah, it was nice to see them come back. I like you nominating Jim Schwartz because I think to this point in the season he's done a hell of a job, especially the last two games, helping get this team out of a hole that they found themselves in. They put themselves in very early on in their last two games. So I like the nod to give to Jim Schwartz. I went with Calvin Johnson because...
Oh, I was trying to stop you. I want to say before we get to yours, let me ask you this real quick.
Go ahead.
It was presented to me by a friend, and we should do a wrap-up episode when this is all done and with final thoughts. Somebody said to me, if Jim Schwartz had this version of Matthew Stafford, the Lions would have been Super Bowl contenders under him. Thoughts?
Oh, I think it's very, very possible.
Fair?
Yeah.
We can address that later. But through 4 games, at least in 2011, that feels fair.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing about Matt Stafford, I think, to this point, through 4 games in 2011. He's erratic. I think that's the one word you can use to describe him.
You see his youth.
Yeah, exactly. I gave it to Calvin Johnson. I think he had 2 monster touchdowns in this game. I think he played probably to this point in the season, probably played his biggest game. He was, like you said, this was a whole team comeback, but he was very instrumental in helping get this team over the hump and get them to W.
It's funny. I thought this was his, he had 8 receptions, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. I thought it was his most underwhelming game to this point.
Why is that? Is that because there was no marquee play that really stood out?
He had the jump ball in the end zone that I think is going to be, like I said, on any of his highlight packages. But, to this point, through 4 games in 2011, one impressive jump ball is, the minimum for entry. We're not actually talking about Calvin Johnson if he doesn't have one of those. He's got one of those in every game so far. And outside of that one, I thought what he did was done quietly. It didn't stand out.
You know what? I get it. I totally understand. I just think when Stafford needed a big play, it was Calvin Johnson that he turned to in this game. Just like it was Pettigrew the last game, it was Calvin this game. And when they needed big third downs and they needed to move the ball down the field, he had no problem finding Calvin. And Calvin was there. Calvin was big time in this game, in my opinion.
All right. Anything else you want to get to mention about these 2 games before we look ahead?
I'm excited for what comes next week. I feel the Lions were very fortunate to get 2 wins in both of these games. I do like the fact that the coaching staff, it feels like you have, at this point, it feels like you have a coaching staff. You have a staff that is able to make halftime adjustments, come out and the team either rallies around it or they understand their jobs and they go out there and they do them, and it helps lead to wins. So to this point in the season, I'm excited. I'm happy that we're 4-0, but I am geared up for what comes next week because next week is the game. Probably. I know for you it's a big game. For me, it's a monster game. Probably the best game I've ever attended live.
Yeah,
and I've got some thoughts on when I was leaving this game that I can't wait to share with everybody next week.
Week 5 and 6 are both games I remember very well. Week 5 in particular was one of the best memories of my life. Week 6, not as great, but we get our first loss in week 6. So in a way, that's fun. Just to get a change, to do something a little bit different here. So that'll be coming up next week. Of course, every episode comes out Sundays right around 1 o'clock. So if you need your football fix, we're here for you. This has been the Practice Squad presents the Throwback.